Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome. How is everybody doing today? I see many of you already connected and I'd like to see who is here. Let's see. Once again, I don't want to miss anybody. Alain is here, Claudette is here, Karen is here, Shelly, Rocky, Judy, hi. And I'm glad some of you are eating. It's always good to have lunch and learn, so you feed your soul, you feed your body at the same time. Nothing can beat that, right? Taking care of both body and soul. That's the idea of Judaism after all. So I'm glad you are taking that literally. And we are going to study today talking about feeding the soul and all that stuff. This parsha, Chukat, it presents one of the most interesting topics, or I wouldn't say topic. Let me try again. Dilemmas. I think that's what it is. Dilemmas on the Torah, which is the topic of the red heifer, the red cow. By the way, I have a problem here with the logo. I can see that I still have that's it. Now you can see the new logo. We are showing the Pride colors during the month of June, but I didn't realize that we had already the other one, so I have to hide it. So now you can see it. Yeah. So, as I said, we have this idea of the red cow, that nobody understands why we have that commandment in the Torah. We're going to analyze a little bit more in a few minutes, don't worry. But it will open the door for a conversation on all those commandments that they have no reason at all. Or at least we cannot understand what's the reason behind some of those commandments. I'm pretty sure each one of you can think of at least one mitzvah, one commandment in Judaism that doesn't make any sense to you. So if you want, you can type it on the chat and let me know which one is that one commandment in Judaism that does not make any sense at all to you. And then maybe we can talk about that in a few minutes. I have my own, but hi Priscilla, welcome. So maybe I should start with mine. To me, the one that does not make sense at all is the shatnez. This prohibition of wearing wool and linen on the same garment. That's such thing. It's actually a prohibition from the Torah. You're not allowed to have in the same garment wool and linen. And then you may be thinking, well, who's going to wear wool and linen at the same time? Wool, it's something that you will wear in the winter, right? Like a sweater or something like that. And linen is almost like a summer fabric. So how can you wear both together? Well, you will be surprised how many times you can have this kind of combination in the same garment. Sometimes you can be wearing, I'm trying to think some examples some people gave me. You can be wearing a nice suit. And you know that sometimes the suits are made with fine wool. But then the thread of the buttons may contain linen. So then you are violating a commandment from the Torah. Hi, Marina Eisen, welcome. So if you want to share with me your favorite case where there is a mitzvah commandment from the Torah that does not make any sense to you, please let me know in the chat. I'm very curious. Very curious. Shelly Chochinov. Let's see what you say here, because I heard this before. Karen, you said the linen helps keep the shape of the wool item. Sometimes. Shelly, you said they are designated people who go into large department stores, especially in New York City, to inspect men's clothing for their content. Yeah, this is within religious communities. And I think that was the first time that I heard something similar to that. I was traveling in New York City. I went to a Judaica and there was an ad of Shatnez Lab, What is a shatnez lab? Well, if you are not sure if your clothing has such mixture, you will take it there and they will analyze it for you and they will tell you if you're violating that commandment from the Torah or not. I found it very interesting. Very interesting. The other things, many different things. So let me know. Let me know in the chat. I gave you enough time for each one of you to think the favorite commandment that does not make any sense to you. Because that's exactly what we are going to be talking to you today. Claudette, you said, let's see. Is the wool and linen literal of this supernal meaning behind the commandment? No. Literal. Literally. And this is something that is not so common in the Torah, where all the rabbis agree. You will see many times there is a commandment, and yes, well, there will be different disagreement, and one will have one interpretation, the other one will have another interpretation, but the wool and the linen together, there is no disagreement. Everybody agrees that it's literal, and you are not allowed to wear a mixture. And doesn't matter if it's for men and women. Everybody is obligated to check their garments to be sure that there is no such mixture present. Yeah. So let's go to the Torah. I had to push my button here. Let's see if I can bring it there. Oh, look at that. I still have the background from my teaching from Grey Academy. I never change it. I guess it looks nice anyway. Okay, Karen, you give me your favorite. Your favorite, Karen Farkas. You said the difference in time between eating dairy and meat depends on which you eat first. Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. Yeah, I kind of agree with that one. So, we are starting today, and Hashem spoke to Moses, and to Aaron, saying, this is the chok. I didn't want to translate that word on purpose. You will see why. Chok of the Torah which Hashem has commanded. Speak to the children of Israel that they bring to you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and upon which never came a yoke. Okay, I don't know if you understand this specific commandment, that they have to find a red cow, but it has to be perfectly red. It cannot have, he said, without defect. And in this context, defect means that you cannot have not even a hair with a different color. It has to be perfectly red. So you can imagine how difficult it was to find this animal, such animal. And there is all these theories that if you were lucky enough to own one of those, then the temple will pay you a fortune for that animal so they can use it on the ritual that is described on Numbers 19. Hello, Roberto. Welcome from Puerto Rico. I would have any doubt that with Roberto, how do they call people from Puerto Rico? Is it Boricua? Is that the word? Just let me know in the chat. I couldn't remember. It's just bothering me. Okay, so the idea is as follows. If you happen to find, back at the time of the temple, this red cow, the temple will buy it from you, and it's going to be burned to ashes. Then those ashes, they're going to be used in a ritual where anybody who has any kind of impurity, by touching those ashes, will become immediately pure. Right? Kind of so like a magic ritual. And then the interesting thing, and this is why this is difficult to understand, that it says, but whoever is preparing that mixture with the ashes has to be a pure person. By touching the ashes will become impure. So look how crazy this is. If you are impure, you touch the ashes, you become pure. If you are pure and you touch the ashes, you become impure. Very logical, right? And how is this that just ashes can purify you? It's not clear. Not clear at all. But that's why those kind of commandments are called a chok. Chok. sometimes translated as ordinances. But as we are going to see in the middle, those are called decrees. Decrees, the chok is a decree from the Torah. Yeah. So Shelly, you said one white hair of the calf is not acceptable. No, they have to be perfectly red. Karen, so wouldn't people tweeze out the offending hair to sell it to the temple? Maybe. Who knows? Shelly, she said, Tumah tahara. Yes, if you have a tumah, which is impurity, you become tahor, pure. But if you are tahor, you touch the ashes, you become tumah, which is impure. Absolutely. Roberto Franco, here is my answer. Boricuas, because the original Taino inhabitants of the island of Puerto Riqueños, because the Spanish name was Puerto Rico. Yeah, Boricua, that's what it was. Thank you so much. I couldn't remember. I was almost certain that is Boricua. Hello, Michael Legoff. Welcome. We are talking about those commandments that we cannot understand from the Torah. So the question for today, Michael, if you want to participate, is let me know your favorite commandment from the Torah that does not make any sense to you. I'm just curious about which one is for every one of my students today. Okay? So this is a chok. So let's try to understand more today about the chukim. That's the plural of chok. Because we all know that in Judaism we have commandments that they make total sense. If the Torah says you shall not kill, come on, do I really have to explain that to you? I hope not. You understand right away why the Torah will say that, and it's perfectly logic. But if I say to you, you have to bring a red cow and do this ritual, why? Because the Torah doesn't say why. Well, I mean, I say what it does, but it doesn't say why that way and not another. Hello, Sarah Blumberg. Welcome to the class. Okay, so let's start now by reading a text from Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder and first Rabbi of Chabad. And he said, this phrase, so the verse that I just read, could be understood in two ways. On one level, it means that this, the law of the red heifer, is the ultimate decree or chok. It's a perfect example of a chok, the most supra-rational of all the Torah's precepts. A deeper meaning is that all of the Torah is, in essence, divine decree. It is only that with many of the mitzvot, the supra-rational divine will come clothed in garments of reason. So in other words, let's go back to this one, and this is what the Rabbi explains. He said when he says this is the chok of the Torah, the first Rabbi of Chabad understand what it means is the entire Torah is a chok. In other words, even if you think you understand, you can never understand any of the commandments at God's level. So why really God gave us those commandments? The real reason we can never understand it. So you have to take the whole Torah as a decree. The whole Torah. And this is a specific example of such decree. Okay, but it's talking about the whole Torah. Some people said, when it said this is the chok of the Torah, it's talking about specifically the red heifer. Okay? Priscilla, you said you have a question. Are these red cows still exist? They say that once in a while somebody can find one of those. Sarah Bloomberg, you said, why do we have to watch that our clothes are made of? Oh, you came late. I talked about that before. That was actually my favorite one. My favorite crazy commandment from the Torah. The mixture and the clothing. Yes, there is no explanation for that. And Michael, you said excluding all the commandments regarding Korban. Okay, so you don't understand why we need sacrifices. Very interesting. Roberto Franco, my question is about purity and impurity. They're very human terms instead of Tehorah and Tumah that I thought referred to something more spiritual. Yeah. Purity and impurity is not about physical dirt, or it's not that you are dirty. Yes, it is a spiritual status. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes we get lost in translation. Absolutely, you are right. Yeah. Karen said, there is a field with several red heifers on the road where I live. Oh, okay. I would like to see that. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, Claudette, you have your favorite. A jealous husband without a proof could take his wife to the priest. Yeah, Isha Sotah. We read about that. It's also, it doesn't make any sense. But the difference is that one was discontinued. Well, I guess the one with the red cow was discontinued because there is no temple. But if the temple gets rebuilt by any reason, then we should basically go back to try to find the red heifer. While the rabbis decided, even by the time the temple existed, that the Isha Sotah, the jealous husband and all that, was discontinued. We don't do that anymore, thank God. Okay, whew. That will be interesting if we had to do that. Yeah, but remember, Karen, that it has to be perfectly red. But I guess in these days with genetic modification, you can even have perfectly red cows. Who knows? Okay, so let's go back to the Chukim. Let's study a little bit more about that. Okay, so let's explain a little bit about the different mitzvot. Oh, look at me. I am too big here. Let's see if I can move myself out of the way a little bit. Right there. It says, generally speaking, the mitzvot, the commandments, are divided into two categories. Logical, mishpatim, laws or judgments, and supra-rational chukim, decrees. The mishpatim are the mitzvot such as the commandments to give charity or the prohibition against theft and murder, whose reason and utility are obvious to us, and which we would arguably have instituted on our own if God hath not commanded them. Okay? We have many examples of other cultures that they were never exposed to Torah, and they came out with something similar to that. So those are basically the mishpatim. The chukim are those mitzvot such as the dietary laws, the kashrut, right? Or the laws of family purity, which we accept as divine decrees, despite their incomprehensibility, and, in the most extreme of the chukim, their irrationality. We also have a third category, the eidot, testimonials, that occupies the middle ground between the decree and the laws. A testimonial is a mitzvah which commemorates or represents something. For example, the commandment to put on tefillin, to rest on Shabbat, or to eat matzah on Pesach. These are laws which we will not have devised on our own, certainly not in the exact manner in which the Torah commands. Nevertheless, they are rational acts. When their significance is explained to us, we can appreciate their importance and utility. Yet, each of these terms, mishpatim, chukim, and eidot, is also used by the Torah as a synonym for mitzvah and a reference to all commandments of the Torah. Okay? So that's important to understand. Let's say Sarah, what is it, Sarah Bloomberg here? I was going to say there are brownish red, but not red cows out there. Anyways. Sarah, it's a kosher meat is too salty for me. Oh, it's not salty. They wash out the salt. They wash out the salt. The salt is used to extract all the blood, actually. So we are sure that we don't eat blood. You have to understand that the most important part of the kashrut, the way we kill the animal specifically, are two. One, that we believe that the cut in the neck is done there, of course, to minimize or eliminate the pain to the animal, but also because it's the fastest way to drain the animal from all its blood. Because we were taught in the book of Genesis that we are not allowed to eat the blood with the meat. We are allowed to eat the meat of the animal, but not its blood. So we have to find ways to drain all that blood as quickly as possible, and even though we know it by rabbinic tradition that's called the shechita, and the act of doing it is called the shecht. By that cut in the neck, will produce exactly that the blood will drain quickly. So basically the way it's done is the cut is made, and then the animal is hanged, usually from the legs, so it will drain the blood right away. It's called, the method is called exsanguination, and it's the same way that Muslim, for example, will do it for the halal meat. They also kill their animals by exsanguination. Bye, Priscilla. Have a good day. I know you have an important job to do, so I hope you are going to bring lots of healing to your patients. Have a wonderful day. For those of you who don't know Priscilla Kerr, she's an acupuncturist. So very important job she does, helping people to deal with pain and many other things. So you have our blessing to go and do your important job. Yeah, Shelley, you said, this is very important, what Shelley said here, the whole argument of the prohibition of shechita in Europe versus stunning. Yes, there is I don't even want to go to that now, because otherwise we won't be able to study anything. But I just wanted to present to you the three categories: mishpatim, chukim, and eidot. Okay? Mishpatim, chukim, and eidot. Now, let's continue with this. I want to bring some explanations of this. I can probably put myself back the right frame. Now, I wanted to bring these words from Rabbi Mordechai Becher, because he is, I think it's brilliant the way he's presenting this. He says Judaism, first he presented a verse of the book of Psalms as an introduction. He says, contemplate, literally taste, and see that Adonai is good. How blessed are those who take refuge in him. So he says Judaism does not expect people to be capable of fulfilling the commandments without having any appreciation at all of their depth and beauty, their taste. Study of the reason for the commandments, the Amei HaMitzvot, is perhaps one of the most effective methods of gaining this appreciation of the Jewish way of life. And this is very interesting, because even though many of the commandments have no logical explanation, what this rabbi is saying here is, it doesn't mean that we should not try to understand them. Chukim are commandments that when you read them, they make no sense to you. But once you engage in studying it and comparing sources and to read what other rabbis said about it, you can kind of make sense, at least some of them, and then you realize that they do have a purpose in God's plan. It doesn't mean that you're going to find a reason for every commandment of the Torah. But basically what Rabbi Becher and many other rabbis said before him is that even if you cannot find it, we should get engaged in the process of trying to understand God's will. Why we have to do what we have to do. Even by knowing that you sometimes will fail, you won't understand it. But it's very important for us to understand that because we are not going to be able to understand many of the commandments, it doesn't mean that you should not practice Judaism until the day when you can understand why you do what you do. It's something that the faith in God also means that we understand that the whole Torah was revealed by God, so we fulfill the Torah hoping that one day we will understand the entire Torah. But even if that day never comes, we should still engage in practicing Judaism. And that's pretty much the philosophy in a nutshell, the philosophy of the mitzvot. Okay? And so you see, for example, let's go back in time. Somebody like the Ramban, the Nachmanides, he said, all commandments, even statutes, even chukim, the chok, have reasons. The absence of reason for the Torah that we can understand is a result of our own intellectual blindness. It means that, as I mentioned, everything has a reason, but sometimes we cannot understand it. We just we don't have what it needs to understand and to connect all the dots to understand God's will. It's as simple as that. But it doesn't mean that each one of the commandments is not fulfilling a purpose. In fact, we learn from the rabbis that each one of the commandments is there to fulfill a purpose. It's let's see, Karen, you have a theory about the fibers. Maybe the wool and the linen has to do with mixing animals and vegetable fibers. Maybe, but again, what does it mean? Why is that bad? Right? And it's all part. If you go to the Torah and you read where that prohibition is given, it's a section. I think it's called the kilaim, all the mixtures. So you will read that, for example, it was forbidden to have two different animals pulling from a cart together, like an ox and a donkey. You cannot put them together. Or two different kind of seeds cannot be planted on the same field. So there are lots of laws in the Torah that they are about forbidden mixtures. And this one for the garments is only one of the forbidden mixtures, and it's more prominent because it's something that we use every day. I don't have a field. I'm not a farmer. So all this prohibition of planting together two different kind of seeds doesn't apply to most of us. But clothing, we all need clothing to live in a society. So it's a very important one, and yeah. Different strengths competing for nutrients. That could be for the animals and the seeds. And there was many things that they didn't understand, and I think that also they wanted to prevent, because they didn't know genetics, right? They didn't want to. They were trying to prevent mutations, let's put it that way, that they thought that maybe two different seeds by proximity could become a new species, and there are many theories, but we are not really sure why they did that. Except for the Kohanim, let's say, the priest garb contains the mixtures. Yeah, well, there are many examples where things that they are forbidding in the Torah did not apply inside the temple. For example, the prohibition of lighting fire on Shabbat. Everywhere else, forbidden. In the temple, permitted. So the rabbi said, how is that possible? Because God explicitly allowed that to happen. So you can have many prohibitions that they apply for everybody, unless that God specifically and explicitly in the Torah allows an exception to happen in particular opportunities. Okay, that's why you have sometimes these kind of things, that something is forbidden for everybody except for one person or a specific group. Yeah, it could happen. Could happen, and we have it all the time. The same thing with could be that everybody is commanded, for example, that when you go to visit the cemetery, but the Kohanim are not allowed to, because the Torah specifically say that they are not allowed to, and so forth. Yeah. So let's continue talking about the commandments. I always like to this. Now, let's bring a few texts from Maimonides here, and then we can talk about this. He says, every commandment of the 613 commandments either imparts to us a true philosophy, eradicates a false philosophy, enforces a rule of social justice, nullifies injustice, bestows noble character traits, or warns against evil traits. So basically, Maimonides starts with something very interesting. He will say that each one of the commandments will fall into one of those categories. I guess even if you don't understand how, but somehow they are doing something inside you, either by action or by stopping you from doing an action, etc., in order to create one of those categories. Okay? That's what Maimonides says, in his book, The Guide for the Perplexed, which is very interesting because then I'm going to read a little bit of Mishneh Torah. You have to know that the difference between the Mishneh Torah that Maimonides wrote versus his Guide for the Perplexed, also from Maimonides, is that the Guide for the Perplexed is a simpler book, supposed to be intended for the general public, while the Mishneh Torah is a more scholastic work, if you want. It's more difficult to read. It's specifically a book of halacha. Okay? But so the Guides for the Perplexed take it as something that Maimonides is trying to simplify a complex term or a complex situation to something easy for everybody to understand. Okay? Let's read the Mishneh Torah here. It says, it is correct for a person to investigate the law of the Holy Torah and to know their purpose to the best of his abilities. If he does not find a reason or a purpose in something, it should not be light in his eyes. He should not reject the commandments because he does not know the reasons. And he should not attribute false ideas to Hashem or think about them as profane matters. Very interesting. I just realized here I have the wrong. I'm going to change it to the right thing. Where is it? You see? Now it's organized. I like when everything looks the same. Now, the next one, it says, even though all the hukim of the Torah are decrees, as we explain at the end of the laws of misappropriation, it is correct to contemplate them and to offer reasons whatever possible. And I wanted to bring for you an example of this, because I always think that when you are teaching, it's good for the students to see examples. So when Maimonides says that the hukim basically are decrees from God, but nevertheless we have to try to find a reason, I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. One example that you probably already know, because we read this pretty much every year for the high holidays. These words of Maimonides when we are studying about teshuvah, about repentance. And I'm talking about the sound of the shofar. Maimonides will say that the sound of the shofar is a hawk, is a decree, because the Torah doesn't say why we have to blow the shofar. So this is what he says. And I like the language. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Maimonides says, even though the sounding of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah is a decree from God, a hawk, it still contains a personal message, as if saying, awaken from your slumber, examine your actions, return to your true selves, and remember your Creator. Those who forget the truth in the vanities of time, look inside yourselves, improve your ways and your actions, and abandon the negativity in your life. I love it, because he says at the beginning, he said, even though the sound of the shofar is a hawk, it doesn't have any explanation. Nevertheless, I'm going to tell you why the sound of the shofar exists. So you will say, okay, so does it have an explanation or not? And the answer is yes. It's both. So basically, I believe that Maimonides think about himself as somebody who actually kind of discovered the reason behind the shofar, and he's willing to share it with everybody who would like to learn it. Okay, so basically what he says is, why do we need the shofar in Rosh Hashanah? It's an alarm clock. Will wake you up. And that's the truth. We human beings need sound to wake up. Think about yourself. How do you wake up every day in the morning? I guess it will be easier if we could rely on light. Like the rooster, right? The rooster is an amazing creature because the rooster reacts to the first ray of light. The rooster is never too tired to stay in bed in the morning, right? Yeah, Karen, you said light, but we cannot rely on light. We human beings learn to block the light from early age. See what happens if you really want to sleep and light comes through the window. I'm pretty sure you won't find a way to cover your eyes and you will keep sleeping. It's very easy to do, right? So you can actually, you can close your eyes and block the light, but we don't have a natural mechanism to block sound. We cannot block our ears. Yeah, I guess you can put your hands or something, but naturally, without your hands, you can block light, but you cannot block sound. Think about that. So Maimonides was connecting the dots. And I said, why do we need the sound of the shofar before Rosh Hashanah? Doesn't make any sense unless it's something that is there to wake us up. And once you wake up, you can see the light. You can appreciate the light. And again, this is because start with sounds, but then for example, if you look at the psalm that we read every year for the high holiday season. Adonai Ori, God is my light. But you cannot appreciate light if you don't wake up first. So that's exactly the way we operate every day. We rely on sound to wake up, then we can do whatever we have to do. So this is the same. Blow the shofar, wake up, and then do what you have to do. What is that you have to do? Well, examine your action, return to your true selves, and remember your Creator. Those who forget the truth in their vanities of time, look inside yourselves, improve your ways and your actions, and abandon the negativity in your life. But you have to be awake first to achieve that. And that's what Maimonides is saying. Any comments? Because I'm about to switch to another topic that I wanted to talk to you today, which is very interesting. So I want to give you an opportunity to comment about the Hukim. And actually, I read, one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm studying the book of Proverbs. Yeah, that every night before I go to bed, instead of watching Netflix in these days, I started to read the book of Proverbs. And I'm enjoying it very much. Actually, one of my favorite parts, I have to say, was the introduction to the book that is talking about King Solomon in general. It's talking about King Solomon's personalities and many other things that he achieved. But one of the texts is about that is talking why the Torah is not giving the reason for the commandments. Because you can ask yourself that, right? Why isn't God telling us why? Or the reason behind the mitzvot? Why do we have to go and engage into that process to find out? And they would say in there, it says, because if the Torah will add the reason, you will always find a way to not fulfill the mitzvah. Because you could say, well, I don't need that. I can achieve the same thing in a different way. Or you say, I can find a way around that. So I've never thought about that in those terms. Like the Torah is not giving us the reason behind the mitzvot, so we won't abandon the mitzvot, because that's our tendency, always to outsmart God. We always like to find our own ways of doing things. So that maybe that's one of the reasons why God is not giving us the reason behind the mitzvot. And by the way, I'm hoping at one point that after I finish reading the book of Proverbs, maybe one day I will put together a class so we can study together. But so far, I'm really, really enjoying the book. Okay, so let's move on to the next set of verses that I want to show you. There is a very sad moment in the Shelly, sign me up. Well, let me finish the book first, Shelly. It's something I've never studied before. Okay, so this is one of the low points of Moses' life. This is when God asked him to talk to the rock, and instead Moses hit the rock with his staff. And it's in Numbers chapter 20, verses 7 to 12. And it goes like this. God said to Moses, take the staff, assemble the community, you and Aaron, your brother, and before their eyes, tell the rock to produce its water. You will bring them water out of the rock and thus enable the community and their livestock to drink. Very nice. Moses took the staff from the presence of God as he had ordered him. But after Moses and Aaron had assembled the community in front of the rock, Moses said to them, listen here, you rebels! Are we supposed to bring you water from this rock? Then Moses raised his hand and hit the rock twice with his staff. Water flowed out in abundance, and the community and their livestock drank. But Hashem said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust in me, so as to cause me to be regarded as holy by the people of Israel, you will not bring this community into the land I have given them. And I wanted to bring this to you because in theory, this is why Moses will never enter to the promised land. Yeah, after everything that he did for the Jewish people, doesn't matter. It's like it never existed. All the good he did is like it never happened because of this episode, now you're not going to enter to the promised land. So at the end of Moses' life, yes, he's granted the opportunity to see it from the distance. But he never entered. He died before crossing the Jordan River. Okay? Claudette, you said King Solomon asked for wisdom and understanding, and he received everything. Yes. I like that. It's a wonderful story. Wonderful story that he had that dream in which God offered him everything, and he asked for wisdom and understanding. Yeah. But it's interesting because in the book says that there are a couple of commandments that are specifically for the king. We don't usually care about those because we are not kings, so we don't read it. Like it says, the king should never have too many horses or too many wives. And it does say the reason why there. And interestingly enough, all the kings that we read in the Torah, they had many horses and many wives. And that is giving us a proof. That's why the Torah shouldn't say the reason why. Because they always said, oh, okay, but that will never happen to me. And you could start rationalizing if you already know what the intent is. So, yeah. It's Book of Proverbs. Okay, back to Numbers 20. This is the episode when Moses hit the rock instead of talking to the rock. In fact, I want to bring to you 3 different comments from 3 different rabbis about what was the problem with Moses in that episode to the point that he was not allowed to enter to the promised land. So I want to bring to you Rashi, Maimonides, and Nachmanides. And Rashi said the problem is he struck the stone instead of only speaking to it as Hashem had instructed. In other words, what was the problem? Moses didn't obey God. Very simple. Now, Maimonides said that was not the main issue. The main issue is that he got angry. Who's he? Moses. Moses got angry. And Moses said, "Hear now, you rebels." What do you mean rebels? Why rebels? These people were thirsty. They were asking you for water. Now you go tell me what's wrong with that. They were not rebels. So basically, Moses had no reason to get angry with them. They were thirsty. They plead for water. And God said, yeah, I want to give them water. Talk to the rock and the rock will give water. And Moses said, hey, you rebels, why are you asking for water? Because they are thirsty? Yeah, I know that there were other times in the past where they rebelled for a little thing. But it looks like this was not a little thing. And Moses got confused. Not because something happened in the past, it means that it's going to happen again now. And a leader should be able to distinguish that. Sometimes we make the same mistakes. We judge the present based on something that happened in the past. And sometimes things change, and we have to learn to adapt and to read the new situation as they are. So it's almost like Moses got stuck in past experiences where the people of Israel actually rebelled, but this was not the case, and he called them rebels. Now the Nachmanides, the Ramban, has a different interpretation. He should have attributed the miracle solely to Hashem, because remember that here that Moses said, "Are we supposed to bring you water from this rock?" What do you mean, we? What do you mean, we? Moses, what do you think you are? This is God giving them water. Yes, you're going to talk to the rock, but the miracle should be pinned on God. Don't pretend that it's because of you. So that was the problem that Nachmanides said. And there is a little bit of everything here. Yes. Yeah, Michael, you said, let me read your comment. It's their interpretation that Miriam just passed away and Moses was still mourning. Yeah, and you say the reason for no water was that the well of Miriam stopped on her death. That's correct. But so the people were thirsty, and they asked for water, and God said, yes, Moses, give them water. But Moses made a few mistakes here. Because yes, in the past, Moses has to hit the rock to create water. But that was in the past, not now. And we will see, hopefully next week, when we study Parshat Balak, that we are going to start seeing a new Moses here. It's not the same Moses that we were experiencing up to this point. This was something that is raising a red flag about Moses' personality as a leader. And that's why we are going to see more and more about Joshua taking a more prominent role. And we are starting to see a Joshua that is going to become the next leader. Moses failed here, and we will see that he fails also on the next week's Parsha, when we are going to study about Balak, this wizard that was hired to curse the people of Israel. It's going to be a very interesting thing, because this is the beginning of the end of Moses. And then we know that as we end the book of Numbers, then immediately we go into the book of Deuteronomy, where it's going to be the last day of Moses on earth, and then it's going to be all about Joshua. Okay? So, but let's finish the class with one more comment about this episode of the rock. This is from a Hasidic Rebbe, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. And he said, Maimonides' explanation and Rashi's explanation are two sides of the same coin. If a leader's influence on the community is achieved through harsh words and rebuke, then his relationship with the environment is likewise. He will have to forcefully impose his will on it to get it to serve his people's need and their mission in life. If, however, he influences his community by lovingly uplifting them to a higher place so that they, on their own, will desire to improve themselves, the world will likewise. In other words, we read the Moses, we had the Moses last week when he had the problem with Korach, and he tried to talk to them. Remember that? That's the Moses what we like. The Moses would like to talk with people, who like to try to find a peaceful solution. Now we have a Moses that seems to be trying all the opposite. He was willing to talk with Korach, that he was a rebel. He was a troublemaker, and he tried to talk to him. And now, I guess, I don't know, maybe he was traumatized by the Korach episode, that he realized that attempt of dialogue didn't work. And now that these people come to us for water, he didn't try to dialogue. And he tried to be harsh to them. I don't know. But we will see that even this episode is going to leave a blemish on Moses, to the point that next week, when he's going to have a problem with the aftermath of Balak, he won't know what to do. He won't know what to do. Because Balak, I don't know, let me give you a quick preview of what's happening. Balak was hired to curse the people of Israel. He couldn't. God didn't allow Balak to curse the people of Israel. Actually, no, Bilam the wizard. Balak was the king who hired him. So when Bilam couldn't do it, according to the Midrash, Bilam said to Balak, look, you're not going to be able to defeat them in the battlefield. So what you have to do is talk to the women, your people, and ask them to tempt the men of the Israelites. You will see how you are going to get them that way, because their God doesn't like that kind of lifestyle. And that's exactly what happened. You will see that that will be actually portrayed in Parshat Pinchas, with this zealot actually end up killing the sinners. Why? Because Moses didn't know what to do. And when I read this parashiyot, these Torah portions, I can see actually a progression of Moses that is started to get confused. His leadership model started to fail him, and he didn't know what to do. When he needed to be strong, he tried to dialogue. When he tried to dialogue, he gets strong and harsh, and we will reach a point where he will be paralyzed and he won't know what to do. You'll see. You have to stick around, because we are going to eventually read all those things. So thank you everyone for participating in today's class. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be with you. Remember, we get together every Thursday at noon to study a little bit of Torah. Some of you been having lunch at the same way, and that's great. But it's always a pleasure to have you here. Please remember to subscribe to our channels and hit the bell so you will be notified every time we go live or every time we upload something to our channels. Have a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe and hope to see you soon. Bye everyone. Have a good day.